Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Village of Essex Junction Trustee meeting for Tuesday, September 10th, 2019. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any agenda additions or changes?
Yes, sir, we do. We have two items, 5D, which is an approve an order to void and rescind the decision and order and the notice of survey, both dated July 17th, 2019. This is regarding the Crescent Connector. 5E, authorize the Board of Trustees Chair and Unified Manager to execute agreements related to Crescent Connector project. That's mainly for easements and right-of-ways that need to be acquired. And then, just a handout that's at your place regarding the CCRPC annual report.
Thank you. And 5E, if that sounds or looks familiar to anybody else, when we did this last time, there was just a motion that was agreed upon, but there was no formal document that was signed. So that's just going to be the difference. If we have a signature document this time.
Yeah. Okay, so I will move that we add the items referred to by the manager to the agenda.
Second. Great. Before we go into any further discussion, I'm noticing that we don't have a minute taker right now. Greg, you drop down.
Yeah, I'm taking some notes, and
Great.
Tammy will use channel 17 as necessary.
Okay.
Second part in one of the five corners.
So with the motion on the table, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great, thank you. We are on to item 4, the public to be heard. So now's the point in time when if anybody in the public wants to say something that's not on the agenda, now's a great time to do so, seeing as there's nobody in the public. Is there anybody to talk? Sorry, that's the auctioneer voice. Hearing none?
That's light.
Great, so we will move out of public to be heard, and we are now into business items 5A, the presentation from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. Mr. Baker, thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much for making time on your busy meetings, I know, especially after last night, I guess. So I'll try not to make this too painful, but, and I apologize that you didn't have more time to review the report. Did you just get it yesterday, maybe? Yes. Yeah.
So it would be appreciated if you could do an overview as to what's in the report.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And then you're going to cut me off when it's too much. So, and just by way of background, I try to come every fall to kind of do a little bit of a recap about what we did for the town, what we're doing countywide in the last fiscal year. And sometimes that will lead into things that are going on now, which is totally fine, but this is kind of our report looking backwards. So it doesn't focus on too much of the things actually going forward. And the first page of the report really gives you background about the RPC. We are an organization of the municipalities. Our board is made up of the municipalities. You see down at the bottom that Dan is the trustees rep on our board. A very active member, glad to have him. Thank you, Dan. And also just a little bit about kind of our financial structure. We don't have we have no taxation powers, no general revenues, other than the dues, which total up about $245,000 last year. And then there's also local match on projects. Our overall budget's closer to 5.7. So what we do is really leverage that $1 of dues for $11 of state and federal funding. But we really work, I almost think of us as kind of a public sector consulting agency. So we're working under performance contracts, whether it's for the village or for the state or the federal government on a brownfields contract. So that's just background. Any more questions on that? The second page is the specific things that we're doing last year in Essex Junction. Your municipal plan got done. And so I know these are all things that you are probably much more familiar with than I am, to be honest. The Design Five Corners implementation plan, So that was going over a couple of years, trying to work on some details there. The parking plan, this says it will be complete, but it was completed, I think, last spring or fall. And so that actually is done and under budget, as always happen. The sidewalk path scoping study on 15, that is still getting worked on. And then the culvert scoping and Densmore Drive, Brownfields, we did some work here at 3 Maple and 1 Main Street. Emergency management order, traffic counts. So, and then on the third page, bottom of the third page is things that are in the capital program with V-Trans. You have a stormwater project, that gravel wetland, Crescent Connector, maybe a little street you've heard of.
Yeah.
And a truck. So those are just things that are in the capital program. And then the one thing going forward on top of page 4 is what you have in our work program. We do an annual work program. And the one thing that the village asked for was for funds to help with inspecting your stormwater system. So that's, I guess, kind of the big project you asked for. Probably, if you remember, that was probably last winter that you talked about that. The last few pages are things going on at the RPC without being specific to one municipality. And in general, we're still kind of tracking our regional plan called the ECOS plan. We're tracking indicators tied to that. We do a legislative forum each December. That one, if you want to mark your calendars early, is December 10th, I think is the date this fall. You may have heard a little bit of press just yesterday on the Building Homes Together campaign. We're on track. We set a target of averaging 700 a year for new homes. We're kind of meeting that because there was a really big 2016 number for production, but not meeting the goal for 20% of those being affordable. So it's still, and really our housing market is still not healthy. So there's still a lot more work to do there. On public health issues, still doing some support with the Opioid Alliance. And please interrupt me, anything that you want to jump into or dig into more detail. Emergency management, we staff the local emergency planning committee. We've been doing a lot of work on energy planning, including with individual towns. Some training things, byways, a lot on clean water. The municipal roads general permit is another clean water activity. So I'm going to stop reading all these. But elderly and disabled is something, the transit service review is something that we worked with the United Way and GMT to start, and that may be something that we circle back, and that may be more of a town issue than a village in terms of how that's funded, but here in Essex Junction, but
Well, currently the town funds it and is through GMT,
yeah.
but we provide the drivers. Is there grant monies or is it just doing a survey of?
There isn't really additional funds. I think, part of the question, I think as we started to look at that service a little bit more was, we're the only part of the state that has a very municipally driven system. And so, depending on which municipality you live in, you get a different level of service, which towns have agreed to pay for. And so, I don't know how familiar, and the system was set up quite some time ago, maybe going back to 15, 20 years. So part of what I was, and maybe this is a good question to ask you, like I was thinking that maybe it might be worthwhile just kind of just regrounding everybody and letting everybody know what each other's doing and what other residents are getting in neighboring towns, and not to push things up or down either way, but just we've made it kind of hard on the users in Chittenden County, that because the services vary, it's hard, even on the dispatchers, the call takers to say, but you gotta tell me which town you're in before I know if you're eligible for a ride. So anyway, it's just something, I think we've been kind of looking at GMT, and frankly, the funding is not going up, and so there's pressure on the system, and you're probably feeling it hit your pocketbook as the more costs can pass on to the municipalities each year. So sorry, a little tangent there, but, you know, and oh, by the way, if you haven't heard this, we're getting older. Not anybody in this room, but others of us are getting older, and the demands on the services are continuing to increase, certainly as the boomer generation gets to retirement age. So I'm not gonna delve into any more details here unless there's something.
Sure, I just,
Hold on.
I would love to just hear maybe just a 1 minute, just a little more description. I'm fascinated by the advanced traffic monitoring system using Bluetooth technology. Can you just, I think I know what that means, but I'm gonna pretend I don't. What does that mean?
Maybe I should ask you first.
Okay.
No. So basically, we worked with V-Trans to install some technology on kind of the major travel corridors.
Mhm.
I think they're listed here, right?
Yep.
US 2, including 2A.
Yep.
I can't remember 15. I don't think 15 is on that. But,
Yeah, that's okay.
And it's really to get direct information back into V-Trans's central system so that they can better track what's actually happening on the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And then respond to it. And probably the first kind of response is just traveler information, like, hey, there was an incident on that road, you know, it's got the road shut down, you should find alternative. But things like that, you know, I think are also, that's probably the primary use, is really just kind of incident management.
Okay.
Traveler information.
Okay.
And notably, just the question I always get asked about this, like, okay, so how much is Big Brother storing data? And how much of it's personally identifiable? And to the best of my knowledge, none of it's personally identifiable, and it's not stored. It's just, you know, kind of, it's going through the system so that they can know what's going on and try to help the system get more efficient.
But the recipient of the data, is it local PDs? Is it, I'm just trying to see what you're doing,
Yeah, it's really-
first responders, how does it, who's?
Yeah, but it's going to the central system at V-Trans.
Okay.
And so then they would work with PDs or emergency
Okay,
responders.
okay, that's clear enough.
Yeah.
Thank you, thanks.
Yeah.
Do you know if they're sharing that data with other agencies?
I don't believe so. Yeah, I don't believe that they're storing a lot of it to be shared. It's really, you know, kind of incident management, travel information.
Okay.
So is what this is are these devices that are seeing if I have Bluetooth on my phone and they see that my phone stops really quick? Is that what this is seeing? Like, logistically, what does that mean?
I'm not.
Every device has a unique MAC address
Mm-hmm.
and a Bluetooth identifier.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one is different. So they're point-to-point collecting them and
Right.
comparing them in real time.
So if it's taking longer than it should, then something went wrong in this one location for my phone to get through to where it normally does.
Right,
Essentially.
right.
So is this something that can then be built upon in the future to take away the necessity to have so many police doing speed patrol, traffic patrol?
I don't think that intent is there at the moment. Yeah.
It'd be a privacy issue too.
You know, I don't know, you know, there's lots of
Mhm.
things we could speculate about where technology broadly stated will take us. You know, I think the moment there's so much inefficiency in the traffic signal system in particular, because they're not connected to each other, there's still a lot of work to be done to just get communicating on the traffic signal system better, and better respond to actual traffic flows. We're still a long way from even maximizing current technology in Chittenden County here.
Yeah, when I saw the safety portion, what went to my mind is I know that there are a lot of people that do run through the red light here at 5 corners and or will all of a sudden speed up instead of going to 25 to 30 that they might be going, to go to 35 to 40 to get through the light. So if that type of information is already being collected,
I
then
don't think this would track at that level, nor do I think it's attached. I mean, I know that information is attached to a person, but I don't think that V-Trans has a way to make that connection.
Make the connection.
Gotcha.
That's where the sharing comes in. So we're, you know, if they're aggregating and sharing with other agencies, that would then have, it's very easy to put those together with
I got you.
license plate scanners, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that you already have John Q. Public out there already has access to very much similar type of information. If you download Google Maps, you put that in your car, you open up Maps, it's going to show you based on cellular activity in that area where they show on the road a red mark that's going to be dense traffic or a lot of stopped up traffic, and it's very helpful. I mean, we're a rural state, even a rural county, by any comparison to any metropolitan area, where you have signage every, overpass indicating, there's a crash ahead, whatever. We don't have that, as people could attest on 89 with all the problems. I mean, you don't know until you're there, and then there's no way to get out of it. So it is helpful, I mean, but there are ways to kind of get information immediately on your own phone.
Yeah, and I should, that's a good point. I don't want you to think that V-Trans is solely dependent on this system too. They're also using Waves and Google Maps, so they're connected to those services also, trying to get as good information as they can to help the traveling public. So, any other questions on the report?
Before we move on to the next item, my only other question is there anything that this board, we as a community can do to better help with any of these other regional initiatives than what we're doing now?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the communication has been pretty free and open with the municipality, and, we had probably, a little thing as we were helping with a consulting contract that we could have done better on, so we took that feedback. Thank you, Heather. But, no, I think, I think the village is participating in different activities, whether it's the village and town or however that happens.
Charlie is kind enough to be the host of a regional managers lunch on a monthly basis. Greg attends it, Sarah has attended, I attended. We get to talk about a lot of these issues and many more as they are coming up, the opioid crisis, how, municipalities are addressing it along with planning, et cetera. That's been one. We've, talked about a lot of issues of including things like 89 and what happens when they start that construction, and other things, and then how we can work together on projects. And so it has been quite valuable, and Charlie is also, we were instrumental in the regional dispatch, being sort of that middle buffer between entities.
The squeezy part.
Yeah, the squeezy part, and so it's still moving along, and so they are active.
Yeah, and I do think, that's one topic, I guess if I was gonna put something out there, pay attention to what's happening there, as that, I don't know what kind of impact they may have, on the town or village, dispatching function, and, we've talked about it, at the select board, and I think at the trustees meetings back a year or two ago, but, the town decided not to put it on a ballot, but at the time, that was fine, but I think it's something to just track and see, do you want to participate in some way, or have a voice at that table? And same conversation in Shelburne, they have their dispatch staff, and they did put it on their ballot and voted it down, so, but they don't have a voice at that table right now. And so, but it may be worth monitoring, and I think,
And a lot of what also happens is it gives us a forum. Are there opportunities to share? Are there opportunities to collaborate? Are there what's other people doing in these arenas, that we get a quick 411 on it, and then if we want to continue asking questions, we can. But just knowing that what another community is doing in a particular arena, and if you have any interest, you get a quick, so he hosts those.
One thing coming up later in this fall we'll do host like a regional community justice forum, because we have 5 municipalities that have community justice centers. And again, it's done a little differently here in Chittenden County than it is in the rest of the state. And so the state wanted us to have a conversation, and frankly, the senior managers were, I think, again, feeling that fiscal pressure of costs increasing without any revenue increase. Is there a better way to do this? So you can get a notice on that before too long.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any other questions on 5A before we go, before we go to 5B?
No, I'm good, thank you.
So let's, go ahead, Charlie, if you want to go on to 5B.
5B, okay, so I think this appeared on your agenda as the rail yard relocation. I have a little broader perception of it, so, but I know that was the sensitive point here. And so, and kind of, I'll first do a little mea culpa, apologies, let's not, I've been here 11 years now, this is the first time I think that I've found myself in a position to do what happened this summer, which was kind of jump ahead of the towns a little bit. And just, so we submitted a grant application, and thanks Greg for getting that pulled up there, to the BUILD program, which is it's 100% federal funded discretionary grant program from USDOT. And really, and I think after we did our Metropolitan Transportation Plan last year, there's still these questions about why can't we do passenger rail? Can't we have some sort of rail system here? We have rail lines going through here. And then David Blittersdorf bought those rail cars up from Dallas. And so I think, looking at it, was like, really, can we get to the bottom of this? I mean, there's definitely, we would be the smallest urbanized area with a rail system. So, but maybe the fact that, we have somebody who's brought rail cars here that are probably the most inexpensively to own and operate type of rail cars, maybe there's a way to make that work. And then how would you pay for it, which would really be, there'd have to be a lot of subsidy. Every rail system's subsidized. And how would that be subsidized? And the group, there's a nonprofit corporation now that I guess owns those cars, which is called Champ P3.
Yep.
And so they were kind of talking about, is there enough development potential around potential rail stations, that development revenue, so there'd have to be rental properties, commercial or residential, that rental income could go back into supporting, a low-cost rail system. So I don't know the answer to that, but this opportunity was like, well, maybe this will give us the opportunity to actually find out. And was another big wrinkle in this, which was one of the opportunities that that group identified was, geez, maybe one of the most valuable places that we could redevelop would be the Burlington Rail Yard. And then some people, I'm not going to take the full blame for this, but I'll own it as the head of the organization, had some sort of misunderstanding maybe about some zoning changes that happened here that thought that the village was interested in having a rail yard. So anyway, so we had some little missteps in the drafting. So I apologize for that if that got to your table. I apologize for any anxiety that caused. I did not mean to do that. But we definitely got that communication and took out any reference to Essex Junction being interested in having the rail yard. So there's now a generic task in there. Look around, maybe there's someplace for that rail yard to go. Honestly, from how things sit today, it would have to go south, because that's where Vermont Rail, the state of Vermont has control over the rail line. They don't control anything north of Burlington. That's Genesee and Wyoming Rail. And so, or maybe soon to be Brookfield. So anyway, we'll take a look. Maybe there will be an opportunity. Maybe the rail yard's got to go somewhere. I think Vermont Rail Systems doesn't want it too far away from the urban center. So who knows? But again, so the opportunity to answer that question, and that's a 40-year-old question, I think, in Burlington. Like, boy, wouldn't it be nice if the rail yard went somewhere? But there hasn't been a community, I think, that said, oh, give it to us.
Yeah.
And nor do I expect that to really happen. So anyway, this was a grant application, and then if there are some positive answers that, oh, this may be feasible, it also, the final task is actually setting up a public-private corporation that would kind of be the development, the public interest corporation that would do the development and funnel money back into the rail system, and maybe operate the rail, I don't know, or maybe GMT operates the rail, or who knows. So anyway, I just talked to you a lot about fantasies and possibilities, and but I think what listening to a lot of those conversations, both with the rail lines, the freight rail lines, people interested in commuter rail, planners and engineers, what was obvious to me was that there were so many more questions than answers. And so I think when we saw this opportunity, it was like, well, maybe this is an opportunity to get answers, even if they're no, at least, no is an answer. And we could put some of these issues to bed, because it is something that's been circling around for a long time.
Right.
So sorry, that was a long-winded
No,
intro.
no, and I think I can maybe identify the source or how a little bit of a confusion, because when David came here several years ago, David Wittersdorf, and talked about commuter rail, we talked about a trial run of an Essex Junction to Montpelier.
Oh, okay.
And he had the concept of putting a station at Global Foundries, which we said, oh, sure, it's not our problem, but you can certainly have one there, and it makes total sense. And then I think he had the idea of, well, maybe I could put a side rail there, and maybe I would build something, because he has, I don't know, one of his facilities is making the giant windmill arms, and he needs a big space, and Global Foundries has, again. So the idea, so there was sort of like a sort of a nebulous buzz about doing some kind of a rail thing over there. I don't think it was really like, let's have a full-blown freight yard over here.
Right.
And I think that's probably, I don't know if that was the source, but I think that's probably where it came from. Because that might have gotten second-hand, third-hand, bounced around, and it's like, yeah, Essex Junction is anxious to get this rail yard going over here. So I'm guessing that's, I don't know if that was the source of
The
it.
best of my knowledge, a rail yard is not taxable. So, there's a big difference between having a business that uses a rail line,
Right.
that, generates property tax, and a rail company-owned rail yard that doesn't generate property tax. So just being a little bit of a homer.
Yeah, but just to go back to the whole concept of commuter rail, so is the idea, and I know you're saying this is sort of, you're in fantasy land right now, so you can't really say what it
And
is.
what we threw out here was to look at it from, Middlebury, through Burlington to St. Albans,
Okay.
to Montpelier.
Okay, so you're, okay, so it'd like go Middlebury up the western side through Burlington and then back down the eastern side to Montpelier, is that what we're talking about?
There's a
Something
good
Or
like
point.
that?
maybe to St. Albans.
Here.
Right, we got kind of
Okay.
three directions, and I don't know if one of those directions might make sense, right? I mean, like the St. Albans to Burlington, or Essex, Burlington, probably has the most traffic volume. And certainly that's where we've been getting the most growth in traffic.
Right,
And the other thing that this may play into is, we're also doing the 89 study. And so, invariably, or we will get into, are there alternatives to widening 89? So this was the other thing, like, we weren't gonna be able to answer that question without doing some of this too. I'm like, I don't know, or, that link system. So that's all to say, I don't know which of the three lines or two of them might be best. V-Trans studied the notion of commuter rail maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
yeah,
But use a very traditional
yeah,
equipment, rail equipment that was, I don't know, crazy expensive, like
Right.
$300 million just for the cars and locomotives.
right,
And so that's, a vast cry.
yeah, no,
That's hardcore, that's big city commuter rail.
yeah,
And of course, that made absolutely no sense, but, what Littersdorf bought this stuff for, less than 10 million. So that's
and he's.
orders of magnitude different.
Right, right. I actually went down, I went to the legislative committee when they were dealing with that, and they were all going, this is wonderful, this is never gonna happen here. I mean, that was pretty much it, that was the tone of the whole
To
thing,
the
yeah.
best of my knowledge, this is the smallest area in the country that has a functioning rail system, has about 600,000 people. So, if everybody in this.
Would need the whole state to pitch
Move
in.
to Chittenden County. But I don't see a lot of people advocating for that.
Yeah. No.
But nevertheless, I mean, still, if what he bought, and if it could work somehow, and you could, you could figure out the one where you make the most revenue, but as you said, the one that makes the most revenue is Essex Junction, Burlington. That's your biggest
Maybe
bus
it's a
line.
small segment that starts, yeah. And of course, there is, and we've also been talking, kind of related, but not just because of this, but, this is the one segment, this is, to the best of my knowledge, the next segment in the rail plan,
Right.
the state's rail plan to be upgraded is Burlington to Essex. And so, and that would help just freight movement, just get, trucks off roads. So I'm hopeful that that starts moving before too long too.
Yeah.
What's the population projection for Franklin County going up? Right, I mean, it's next affordable. It's like Essex used to be 20 years ago.
Yeah, so we're, in the 160s, maybe pushing 170,000 population here. They're in the 50,000s, as a percentage, they've been growing faster. Absolute numbers, we're still gaining more new residents than they do, but the percentage is higher there, the base is lower. It's about a third of the Chittenden County size. But, you put us together and, you get 220, 225, but still quite a ways away from 600.
Rail yard aside, this is very intriguing. I mean, the concept of having a GMT-ish, if you will, type of a transit authority to have a development potential to then help to subsidize commuter rail, and all that's happening with the Middlebury project along rail to then hopefully get the train from the southern part of the state up to Burlington. This is the last connection that would be necessary to then get up to Montreal.
Right.
And as this is all coming along the line, this is great timing. So rail yard aside, this makes total sense and very intriguing, certainly.
Rail yard, no. Connectivity, yes.
Can't put the rail yard at the Founders? Ideas, probably.
So,
No.
You'd have freight trains moving at 2 miles an hour going through the village. I think that would be a little problematic.
it's, in the past couple of years, as I now work over in downtown, and you can, a mile and a half away, give or take a little bit from the rail yard, mile away, you can hear it during the daytime.
Yeah.
I imagine it's a little bit easier to hear at nighttime as they're still doing operations or whatever it is that they do.
Yeah.
It's- From a sound perspective, personally, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Let alone then you don't have industrial developable space.
So one of the things I could tell you, having worked somewhere near, somewhat close to a rail yard, near O'Hare Airport, a train going in and out of a rail yard is probably doing 3 to 4 miles per hour. And those trains could be upwards of a mile plus long. And so if you think about the crossing here at Park Street and just take a half a mile train going at 3 miles per hour, going in and out of a rail yard that's about a half a mile or less from here, it's like watching turtle races. And so it does a lot of traffic that way. And a lot of what other people have done is they've then wanted either an underpass or that's not going to happen here. And so, and then to think that the trains are gonna come from the other direction, but when they leave the yard to get to Burlington to go south, it's going to be at 3 miles per hour, because a train that has that kind of weight cannot get its momentum going in that way. And so until that particular train yard, which was owned and operated by the CN Railroad, which is the parent company, or was up until recently, of the Genesee and Wyoming, till they got federal funding for an underpass, they had their rights to go over that road however slowly they wanted to go, for safety reasons or other. So, just to give you that sense of its proximity, it's not just parking a train there, it's also what other activities happen on that main line that gives it activity. Our residents complain about the chip train that apparently, and I know every day it comes through around 4:30.
Yes.
And they,
Back out around 10.
huh?
Yes, it does.
And back out around.
And
10.
back out around 10, and then you've got the Amtrak, and that inconvenience, let alone maybe add another 8 or 10 trains a day or more. So, it's just something we should be aware of.
Yeah, and
And
needless
Charlie,
to
I
say-
thank you for taking out those words in there and things like that, and coming here and owning up to.
Yeah, but communication isn't always perfect. But no, I appreciate, the being straightforward with this. And I'll close this by just saying, we'll know, I think we're supposed to know by the end of October if we got this. Certainly we'll let people know. And certainly there'll be a lot of public engagement. I mean, I threw a lot of things on the table speculating, but there needs to be a lot of public engagement about, even just on the passenger rail side, which municipalities are really interested in doing that, and want to support, the redevelopment around their train stations that would need to happen. And those are a lot of transportation and land use conversations and community qualities of life that need to get discussed in multiple towns in the same time frame. So it'll be a lot, if this is one of those times where, kind of the dog catching the bus, careful what you wish for. We'll see what happens, but.
See what happens. You have nothing better to do right
If
now.
we do catch the bus, there will be a lot of conversations that need to happen, really across
About
3 or
all
4
this.
counties,
Yeah,
to think about, who's interested in what it might look
yeah,
like.
I think it's fascinating.
So, stay tuned.
Yeah. Does anybody have any more questions? Great. Well, Charlie, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Really appreciate all that the CCRPC does as a great partner to the community, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the
Good
time.
night.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Charlie.
Charlie.
Okay, we are now on to 5C, the consider approving economic development funds for traffic barrier. Somebody want to introduce this? Or,
With the opening of, with the opening of the Firebird Cafe at the, one of the 5 corners of 5 corners, there is a concern because he has 2 curb cuts, one on Maple, one very long and large one on Main Street. We're getting and seeing cut-through traffic between Main Street into Maple to get around the light. Not currently happening outside our window. So on the Maple Street side, we have a couple of our former planter boxes that were used for farmers market and a few other events, and a couple of barrels. They're there also, take a step back, in the afternoons, I believe it's 2:30 to 3 o'clock, our police are stationed there, and they help people and children cross the street, so they park a cruiser there. So what we'd like is some current temporary measures to make sure that that cut-through activity doesn't occur, and then ultimately try to figure out with the owner ways to prohibit that movement.
I want to just add one thing, Evan. It's not just cut-through traffic. It's that right now in the village center, if this was a new building going up, he would have been told you can only have parking in the rear. New established businesses in the village center can't have parking in the front. And so it's kind of in violation. I don't want to say it's a violation because it's kind of an odd situation since it was a garage, but I think that it's certainly not in the spirit or the intent of what we want to see in the village center.
And I think the intent was that there'd be parking in the lot behind.
And there are, but again, as you said, there are kids accumulating on the curb out there. So it's sort of a confluence of he doesn't want people pulling in,
Yeah.
but he has no way to stop them right now.
Right.
And we don't want people going in, so it's a confluence of interests. And we've certainly around the village, on Railroad Avenue, Main Street, Park Street, whenever we've had a situation like this, we've always rebuilt sidewalks, put in planters, flowers, benches, trash cans. So it's perfectly within keeping of our usual practice to do something here when we can, see a win-win with the local owner. So I'd recommend doing it.
Amber?
I had a couple of questions. So the memo says that the money that we approved, whenever that was, wasn't needed for the pedestrian connection.
It's in there.
So
you did it
the
right.
Which
Someone did it.
pedestrian path?
Between the parking lot and the front of Road Rescue.
Right.
Our
To the
public
right of
works, our public works.
Oh, our public works did it. I
Our
thought you were
public
talking
works
about
did
another
that.
one in here.
Another project that we were going to fund was additional parking spaces at Park Street
That's it.
School.
That's
That
right.
was since done by the developer
Yeah.
of the
Those are both
senior.
included in this
Right,
memo, I
right.
was saying, because we
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
use the
right.
10 for that, that we were
Right.
gonna use it for that, so I'm just trying to
I think we
figure out.
used, we probably used about $1,500
Okay.
max.
So we did use some money
Yeah,
to
maybe, yeah.
pay for that.
And we did it with our crew, so it was
Okay.
just materials.
What type of, sorry,
No, no, that's right.
Keep going.
I was on
Andrew.
a roll. I guess what is the proposal for barriers? What do they look like? What are we talking about? Are we talking about planters? I don't,
Can I answer, because I had some contact with him.
Yeah.
You know, right now, he doesn't know. He wants, the Essex Police park a cruiser there, and they like to have a cruiser there in the afternoon for when kids are crossing. And so they want to have something that's maybe movable, but he's not sure. And I think the village has, we just conferred and said that the village has barrels from other places, so we could put up, for no money, put up barrels, but it's kind of, it looks like a construction site. So I would just, I mean, my opinion is you make the money available and say, if you can come up with something, have Robin work with Jake to see what they want and make the money available, and if they come up with something aesthetically pleasing, which I would prefer to see, I think that's where you're going, as opposed to making it look like an accident, then I'd prefer to see that, but if they think, you know, there are long-range plans to do more permanent stuff
right.
there, but long-range could mean like 8 months from now, so what do we want there for the next 8 months? So I don't think it's really clear.
And do we need to take into consideration, I don't wanna get up and go look out the window.
You can, go ahead,
But
it's
the emergency access component of this, I mean, I'm assuming that if there is an incident, that, you know, the fire department can get at it from the back end, so they
Yeah.
don't need to be at the front end, but I just wanna make sure that that's, you know, one of those things that we're thinking of too, if necessary.
I think he would be. That's why I think
I would
they'll work
imagine
it out.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rob?
So I got a few questions. Why isn't this just a landlord-tenant issue? Why are we paying for it? Especially if they're gonna redo it. I just don't understand why the village is spending money on something that, and B, why wasn't it in the permit that be dealt with? I just don't understand why we're getting involved. I see with the other projects, a public good that supersedes any one person. The parking at Park Street, we identified that as helping a need in the village core for parking in and around that building. The path, we paid already, and we currently pay to keep that parking lot lit
Right.
and in good shape. We've used our people to put the path in. I just don't understand why. I mean, I'm so excited that he's there.
Right.
I'm excited about the possibilities. I just don't see spending taxpayer money on this, especially if it's just gonna be pulled back out and redone.
The only thing my only response would be, and I'm gonna guess that they're probably just gonna putting barrels there anyway. My feeling is that we certainly could say to him, it's not our problem, you're not supposed to have parking there, and plus if you don't want parking there, it's also on you, so it's totally on you. But I would only point out that since I've been here, other situations like this, as I said, on Railroad Avenue, Main Street, in front of Martone's, on Park Street, we've always tried to work with the store owner or the block or the owner or whatever to help, you know, to put in something that's nice, that's aesthetically pleasing. So given his resources, he might say, okay, I'm gonna just do what works for me financially. I'm not making any conjecture here. I don't know what he would do. But it's an opportunity for us to sort of partner with them. That's all, and we've done this before.
I guess the problem I have is I've heard that we're in talks with the new restaurant just down the road about how they're not complying with the way they look. So if they're not complying with the way they look, and we're discussing what the ramifications are with that new restaurant, Main Street Grill,
Okay.
Right, right.
why weren't we seeing this ahead of time and saying the only way you're putting a restaurant there is if this is mitigated in a aesthetically pleasing and village appropriate way.
I don't believe that is PC. That didn't go to the
Yeah.
PC as far as I know. I think it's just a change of use, and so that's an administrative,
Yeah.
it's not a PC decision.
I mean, I don't think we have those I mean, it would be good to have that.
Yeah.
And I'd be totally in favor of stuff like that. I don't think we have, I don't know, you can tell me, Amber, I
Yeah,
don't
and
think
I
we have
think
stuff like that
the
in place.
issue with Railroad and Main is like, they're two very different issues. The issue with Railroad and Main is a CO issue, and a planning. That was a temporary, so.
And we expedited we did a lot of repair on the sidewalk out, their whole sidewalk in front was banged up and torn up from the construction, and I know that they expedited that really fast to get that up and ready for them. I know, I went by there and saw Village Public Works out there really putting in new concrete and new grass and everything to make them look nice. So I don't know, I'm not the person, I'm not the person to answer all your questions, Raj.
No, I get it, I'm just, that's my hesitation.
Railroad and Main is on a temporary certificate of occupancy. They are been told that they need to update the plan or build the plan to get occupancy. That's one thing. This particular case, it's just a change of use. We are gonna need to talk to them about what's allowed in the front yard and not allowed in the front yard. But it still doesn't change the fact that people come across the curb cut. The question is, do we want to, we should do something at least temporarily to stop that movement, and then work with the owner on the aesthetics of a more permanent fixture than construction barrels.
Raj, did you have another question?
No, I guess I just don't.
We could say, put up, it's up to you to put, you need to put something there, but we can't say what he has to put there. And so if we want to see something that fits with, that's a nice streetscape, then I think it's more on us, since we don't have any specific regulation in place that says, if you have to block access, it must conform to these standards, it must look this way, or it must go through the PC. So that's why I'm saying, that's my point, is saying, if we want to see something as sort of like the entry point for the whole village center, that's a little more attractive, then it's going to be on us to do it. I don't think we can force him to do something like that.
So, I mean,
And
I
before I get to, I just want to
Yeah,
make sure
go
in
ahead.
case Dan had something unless it wasn't clear.
Yeah, no.
Right.
No, I concur with Raj's comments, but, we got that penny on the tax, and we're gonna do that to help businesses, beautification of, the downtown center. So, I mean, I don't wanna put a whole lot of money into something when, we gotta look at it for everyone. I think there's ways to mitigate the problem, to address the issue that, I just think of barrels with some kind of greenery, whether it be it small cedars or something right there, as a buffer. Then you've got something that, doesn't fall off in the wintertime. It's there year round. It's pretty simple to maintain and it's aesthetically pleasing. I think that'd be, I go by several of the stores around here, you can see them for penny, not that expensive to buy a whole bunch of cedars and put them in there. Maybe under $1,000, the whole thing.
Amber, what was the?
I was just gonna say, I mean, I agree with Raj, and I'm still struggling with, I definitely wanna see, if it's gonna be something that gets put there, that it's nice, etc., but I'm still, it's non-conforming, but he's allowed to have it there, and he's actually allowed to use a parking in the front, right?
No.
Why?
I'm sorry, I don't know the.
I mean, I don't necessarily want them to, but
I guess that's what I don't understand too, is if we can say he can't have parking there, why can't we say he can't have curb cuts there? Like,
Well, you
why?
can't take out his curb cuts. I don't, you're asking, I don't know.
I don't
have
either, that's
questions.
what I don't know.
have
And
the
it
answers.
seems silly, I know it's a small amount of money, but I just think we're giving money temporarily, it sounds like, to a private business. It just sounds to me like a,
Well, I don't think we're giving money to him. I think you'd be, and again, I have no idea which even like what Dan is saying, just some cedars. I don't know how much they cost.
The other thing is,
I mean,
it's something that the village could actually have I mean, and move as needed.
Right.
You know, it's not like, you know, you have to have something that is permanently affixed to that property. And, I mean, no more than, like you were saying with construction barrels, the Public Works has barriers that they use at construction sites. This is just a different form of a barrier that maybe is more aesthetically pleasing, maybe that the village can maintain
Right.
and utilize as needed in a case-by-case basis.
So from what I hear, it sounds like we have some questions about just the ability for the parking to happen. We have some quasi-planning commission-ish type questions, some Robin-ish type questions maybe, but I think we've got some questions that would be helpful to get some definitive yes, no, this can't happen. That would be helpful to have, just at least for this conversation. Putting whether it can or cannot happen completely aside and to focus on what we've got in front of us about using the Economic Development Fund for traffic barriers. What personally concerns me, in addition to the fact of these would be public funds to benefit a private business, to not benefit the public, by using a process we've never defined. When we had this penny in the tax rate, one of the things that we said we would do is we would define what the process is for using these funds. We haven't done that, and so what has happened is we've had one-off requests come into the board, and we said, yes, this works, yes, this works. We've never then said, but what doesn't work? So that is another thing that personally concerns me that I think we should address sooner rather than later. Regardless of what ultimately happens with a merger, we should define this if we're going to keep using these funds. And so with having a parking barrier in front of, to block off the traffic, once someone goes through the curb cut, goes over the sidewalk, that's the landlord's and the rentor's problem.
Right.
That's not our problem.
Right.
It's similar to when a car drove through the window of Ray's Seafood. The car went through the parking, went into the parking lot, through the curb cut, ran into the building. Thankfully, nobody, from what I understand, got really hurt. Is it the municipality's responsibility to make sure that once you're in a privately owned parking lot, that you don't do something bad and hurt someone?
You're asking me the question?
No, I'm putting it out there. I guess since you brought this, you brought this to our attention, so I guess that's why I keep looking towards you. So, for me, it's not our problem,
Well,
frankly.
I go in a completely different direction. You go around the village and you can see these little flags that say Essex Junction, little blue things, okay? What do they do? Do they benefit any specific business? Or do they benefit, or are they supposed to add, you know, when we put flowers up, when we have plantings around, when we put trash cans and benches around? Are they benefiting any specific business, or are we trying to create a sort of an aesthetically pleasing, you know, village center? That's the concept. And in terms of the economic development funds, it was specifically left loose because we wanted to have the discretion as a board to identify these things, like we did with the parking garage, for example. Some things are highly specific, some things we might want to say, well, you know what, it might be nice to have some kind of sandwich board or put some more benches over in this place. There are funds that are at our discretion to spend. So I don't think there's any problem with that. There hasn't been a policy, and it wasn't approved pending or with some specific policy in mind. What I'm saying is, and again, in terms of what happens to a vehicle that goes onto his property, obviously I can't say. I'm saying, again, there's a sort of a coalition, a meeting, a joining of our desire to have a pleasing village center, like the flags or whatever, planters, versus that aligns with his need to block entryway. He can block entryway with traffic cones right now. He could just get a bunch of orange traffic cones and put them around there. Is that aesthetically pleasing? Is that the look that we've been going for over the years in the village center? I don't think so. We've been trying to have these discretionary funds that we use to put planters or whatever around. And so I'm saying there's sort of a meeting of the two needs right there. And it's an opportunity for us. We're not necessarily benefiting him. In a sense, we're benefiting us. We're benefiting the entire village center by trying to put something pleasing there, as opposed to putting something that looks like it's a construction site. That's all.
Yeah, so I would be behind having public funds go towards making sure that something is aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
So when we went to St. Albans, that was kind of the impetus for
Right.
creating this fund. One of the things that they did is they created a fund where they would go to they would look at a facade, and if it needed something, they would say, you know what, we will buy the material. If you, no, they would say, if you want our money, you can use our money.
Mhm.
We won't charge you interest for it. We may charge you a small nominal fee
Right.
for administration. Here's the money, pay us back over a period of time. And if it gets paid back, great. If it doesn't get paid back, have some kind of a conversation there. We're not gonna, I would assume you wouldn't take someone to court for a few $100. I would be totally fine with saying, business owner, landlord, if you want some help with doing something that is aesthetically pleasing, we will help pay for it. So that way you don't have to pay interest if you need a loan. But I don't, again, it's not our responsibility, in my opinion, to pay for planters, which yes, I understand is beautification, but the point of it coming up wasn't to make sure the corner was beautiful, but came up to make sure that people didn't drive through and create an unsafe situation.
Okay,
Road Rescue's been there the whole time.
I don't think it's just what you, that, I
But
think
Road
that,
Rescue's been there the whole time, and when it was there, the curb cut on Maple Street was blocked by
But
cars.
the purpose of-
Nobody
the
ever
purpose
came
of
to
the-
us, hang on, Dan, nobody ever came to us and said, let's put planters there to make
Okay.
sure it looks good.
okay, now, just look at it this way too. The use has changed. It's no longer an auto repair place where people are pulling in to their vehicle. This is gonna be a place where people are gonna be eating, sitting out, hopefully, relaxing, enjoying things. It becomes a safety issue and becomes not saying the onus falls upon the village, but it's kind of in the sense that we're aware of a potential issue, and God forbid somebody gets hit while they're sitting out there,
Right.
or some little kids, by somebody pulling there. We're aware of an issue that we could have worked with this person to try and mitigate the problem or find. I think it's not a big deal. I think we can find a way to work through this without, shelling out a lot of money from depending on the tax rate, and basically just helping him out if he needs some help with that. And I think by doing that, we'll set an example to other businesses. Hey, there is this, because I think there's a lot of them out there that aren't aware of this.
So if he needs, if we need to use that penny on the tax rate funding to help front the money, and it gets paid back, I'm all for it.
Yeah, exactly, or just a portion of it, whatever.
I would
Yeah.
entertain that
Yeah.
kind of a conversation.
Well, that's never been, that has never, I mean, you're suddenly putting a completely different condition on the original intent. The original intent was to give us discretionary funds specifically for this purpose. There's never been a situation where we spend this money and where someone has had to pay it back. That was not the understanding. It was discretionary for the trustees to use for aesthetic purposes or for opportunities to buy land or to partner with someone. It was, when we proposed it, we specifically left it open because we couldn't anticipate all the different things. The idea was that it's a relatively small amount of money. It's only $110,000 a year that was going to be coming in each year. And it would have to be approved by the board. There was never a condition set on it, so I think that if suddenly we're going to say, well, we're only going to spend this money if the money comes back to us, that's a different policy, and that creates something, a very different situation than what was originally intended to this. I mean, I also point out that the whole idea of having this fund was, again, specifically to specifically do this. It wasn't for us to take the money and say, hey, we're not going to spend this. We're going to try to keep this and then give it back. The idea was people in the village said, yes, here's $100 and whatever thousand a year because we want to see improvements made in the village center. And we trust you guys to identify those opportunities. That's, in my understanding, that was the intent of this, the penny on the tax rate.
So let me back up to the questions I had for a second, because some great points have been made, and I don't want to belabor this. I am trying to figure out, being new to this, what's the norm, A. And B, the nuance behind why this isn't, repurposing that, just a change of use, still why these improvements, I just don't know. I don't have the experience Amber has from the planning commission and everything, why just a simple change of use wouldn't have triggered conditions on what they were gonna do with that parking lot. If we're now saying, oh, of course you can't park in it, but I was parking when the barbecue place was there, or when Road Rescue was there, but now we can't park there. Or that, well, of course you don't want people cutting through, so if you're gonna redevelop this, you need to fix that somehow. You don't have to change the curb cuts, but you have to block it, as part of the conditions for the permit or whatever he's doing. Those are just I need to understand that. I don't need to understand it tonight.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I can't, I couldn't.
I'm mostly just asking, give me some examples of why this is normal. I've heard some great examples. I don't necessarily, I'll just leave it at that. Just trying to understand, because, I'd love to buy $10,000 crosswalk markers, $10,000 worth of those, at $400 a piece, and pepper the daylights out of this walking school zone. I'd like to do a lot of things that aren't putting planters on what I consider to be private business property. I get what you're saying about the flags and everything else. We do a lot of work to make this an attractive place to be. So I'm just trying to weigh that in my head, that's all. I'm just trying to get some examples of why this is a normal.
Well, why don't you ask about the, I don't know, but
know.
you're talking about the
I don't know
crosswalk.
why I haven't, but I will.
Yeah, I mean,
But I will be now, as I learn more about this fund.
The thing, I just wanted to take it to a different level. It's not about, to get away from the specific thing, is that we've been collecting, this fund sunsets, I think, this coming year. And it's money that I don't say, we shouldn't let it burn a hole in our pocket, but it was money that taxpayers said, we're designating this for this use, for you guys to make the downtown, the village center nicer.
Right.
And we really haven't spent it, a lot of it. I mean, we didn't immediately go out. I think we've accumulated 2.5 years worth or something like that. And I don't know what happens when Sarah's not here. At the end, when it sunsets, I don't know if it just gets rolled back into the general fund, or just gets put back into a fund balance, or what. So my point is that the community voted this for aesthetic improvements and things like that around the village center. I don't want to say they expect us to get out there and spend it no matter what, but I don't think that I think this, in my mind, fits that use.
Amber?
I was just gonna say, I think the answer, part of the answer here is in the permit itself, and we obviously don't have that answer tonight.
No.
So, I mean, part of not belaboring this conversation is, can we table this? And until we get some additional background,
Yes.
including looking at the permit to see if there are any specific conditions, because I think that might or might not make some of the.
I don't see a need that we need to make a decision today, and that this can wait. It sounds like, again, we do have the questions that need to be answered. So if we could have that for our next meeting, this is something that can come up in a couple weeks, and we can have it then.
Well, you're gonna go 2 weeks without anything over there, so, I mean, it's something.
I think, I agree with George that I don't know if we want to wait 2 weeks to put something, but we could certainly put something temporary there. If we believe it's we certainly should work with the owner over the next 2 weeks to get something to keep that, if he is indeed concerned, as he said he has to our staff, we can at least in a temporary fashion, block it.
Has this conversation happened with staff at all?
It is my belief that Robin has talked to him, and I think George has talked to him, and I tried to go, I went over there, he wasn't there when I went there. However, when I was there was a car pulling out and going across, so I think since the stuff was put on the right, on the other side, but again, then our police want to use that parcel for the mid-afternoon, so something needs to be there. What that something is hasn't been designed or priced out yet.
I have the perfect opportunity for this.
Okay.
Bike racks, baby.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm not kidding. Jake's a biker, we just put some bike racks right across the curb cuts.
Yeah.
Literally, the width of the curb cuts. We talked to the bike walk committee, they'll order the Darrows, some really attractive Darrows, they're way less than $10,000, and they will solve your problem.
Well, I'd say then that's the perfect solution, but
It's a
again,
win-win.
you know, you can't,
It's
you
not
can't
just an
say.
area, it serves people.
You
who
can't
can't
say to
afford
Jake,
bikes.
hey, we insist you should put some bike racks up there. But if we wanted to do that, and I think that would be great with me, then you'd say, okay, we've got some money, if you put up we can put bike racks up, bike racks.
You can ask him
we'll
to
pay
match a
for it.
portion of it.
Yeah. I think
Or
that's
give
great.
them
If that was a new application coming through, you could absolutely ask them to put it.
Could you?
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
I think in terms of, I think there's really two completely
Yeah.
different issues here.
Yes.
And I don't, in terms of the application and the change of use, I don't know. I mean, it's because it's a former garage, it's like completely different. I don't think there's been a situation like this that I'm aware of. I don't know.
So I see a few issues. One, we should get on the agenda sometime to talk about the fund. And maybe brainstorm over a bunch of different agenda items on a bunch of different meetings where we see that money going, because this is just nitpicking this, and if it's sunsetting, we ought to get a plan around it.
Right.
Maybe there is one, I have no idea. But the second thing is, if we're gonna spend money on it, we should be able to say a little bit about what we want.
Oh, sure.
They don't have to be completely permanent bike racks, they can be bolted into cement and taken out when he comes up with a better idea. Wants to put a pergola up like he's talked about. But if we're gonna spend 10 grand and we can take them back out and put them somewhere else in the village, that I could get behind because we can repurpose them. You know, planters.
I think it's a great idea. I
you
think
know,
bike
like,
racks are a good
That I
idea.
could get behind because we can use them. But I would love to also see what's going on with the permit. It is gonna take a while to get those in, no question. If there's a
get-
barrier for 3 weeks to get bike racks in while they're ordered. You know, I'm just saying, if we're gonna do something, let's not put planters up, let's put something we know we need. And the bike walk committee's already talked about trying to find, I mean, there's 2 bike-shaped bike racks you can get, they'll cover, 2 together would cover a curb cut. They're $350 each.
Do you want to say to him, we have this idea for putting some bike racks in place to see if that would work with him?
I think if you approached him with it, I think he'd be, maybe not every curb cut, but I think he's got planters on that side.
The only thing I'll say is that, eventually that whole front is going to change. We know that, right?
Yeah, unbolt them and,
So they could be used somewhere else? I mean, that's the only thing. You want to, whatever you put over there, whatever we want to put over there, needs to be something that,
just like they bolted in the bike maintenance station on the corner of Main and Railroad.
I gotcha.
You know, so they could unbolt it, fill in the cement, or whatever they're gonna do.
Would that allow access for the PD though?
No, PD can jump the curb.
Okay.
But that's another thing where it seems like
Well, they can
he
park
needs to be
behind
involved in
them.
this conversation.
No, they're not going to park behind.
Has there been any discussion with PD
Well, what are they gonna do?
about the concerns regarding the safety aspect or fire or anybody about this?
Yes, yeah, I believe that is, and basically the police said we'd like to maintain access but keep people from making that maneuver. So I might make a suggestion, if you guys will allow the manager to explore some bike racks and as an opportunity, especially since they are portable, once they are unbolted. I certainly could have community development and the police work with him on the proper locations and do something aesthetically pleasing with the economic development funds.
I think that certainly something portable makes sense, and let us know what the thoughts are.
Thoughts or do it?
Please reach out to like Micah, they have plans, they have some ideas. Micah is the chair of the bike walk committee. Just to shoot him an email and say, we're thinking of this, do you have suggestions?
Sure.
Please, because they've got that stuff sort of in
'Cause
their
it-
hip pocket.
Not to belabor this, but I think on the Maple Street side, we'd want something that's a little bit more movable for our police to get in and out of there. On the other side, we're gonna want something much more
The only thing
substantial.
movable would be a gate, right? I mean,
Well, not right now, I mean, just something that maybe in the future gets to be part of that design.
So even when something happens to the property at the end of that they're gonna still wanna park a cruiser? I mean, there's parking spots right along.
Yeah, that's it. I
That's
don't know
gotta,
what's gonna
that's
happen
gotta,
there.
that's gotta be discussed of how that's
You know,
gonna.
at a certain point, they're not gonna be able to.
So-
I don't know why he can't, but I
Can't
think
they
the
just park on
idea,
the
Dan can make,
side of
I
it?
think the idea is the cruiser defines his presence. I mean, you don't just have the officer, you have the cruiser there as well. I think that's
Keeps them warm.
what they're saying.
Yep.
And how important it is. And again, we've got busing now, so I looked at today and there were a lot of kids.
No,
There's
there's
still a
still
ton of
plenty of
kids.
kids.
And I don't think that's gonna change.
This whole half mile around here, they're still walking.
The kids are still gonna walk and accumulate there every day. That's not gonna change.
So, Evan, what I gathered from you were looking for an approval right now, or for tonight, to explore use and purchase of some type of temporary barriers using
In the
economic
bike
development
rack
funds.
realm, and
Mhm.
again, if it's, the lead time could be who knows? Who knows what the lead time could be? It could be 3 weeks, it could be almost anything, but if I have to wait to come back for 2 more weeks to then have a discussion to then order it, so I'm looking for some latitude to work with community development and the property owner. You pick the amount.
So what are the bike racks, 300 each, 400 each?
What do people feel?
I think Roger's idea of the bike rack's a great idea, to tell you the truth. I mean, I'm not for just a standard, galvanized steel bike rack. I'd like to see it painted some colors or something.
I can
Something
show
to
you
spruce up,
really quick.
something really nice,
What I'm thinking, what
Yeah.
the bike walk committee was, I'm surprised they didn't order a couple, of- honestly, I thought they were. And I'm surprised that they didn't. I guess they couldn't do it before the end of the budget year.
Do you have an
Oh,
approximate
you're
amount
talking
in
something
mind?
like this here.
Well, you've seen the generic loop ones, which is, you can do a combination, but they were gonna get a couple, and you're gonna laugh, but these, I saw these all over Honolulu, Austin, Texas. And they look like bikes. They'll fit 2 to 3 bikes as a rack. They're about 5 feet long, 1 or 2 across a curb cut covers you. And they're not that expensive. You can get them in custom color, they could be Junction colors. You could have a Junction plaque across the wheel.
I think it'd be, personally, I think it's terrific.
They're medium, I think they're somewhere between 300 and 450.
So let's
So-
call it 4.
All in
4 of them.
Couple.
4 of them to make sure that we're done, so let's talk,
2,000 go to
let's
2,000.
call it 2,000, because
Yeah, you might have delivery charges and
Yeah.
taxes. I mean,
Yeah.
in and around $2,000.
So what if we, and I know I had the initial questions, what if you didn't spend all of the approved money in the past 2 go-arounds? You didn't spend all of the village did not spend all of the approved money in the last 2 go-arounds.
right.
So why don't we just make this motion to do the 10 with the understanding that we really don't have to spend all 10, right? Just like before? I mean, we all got creative with not using it all for both projects.
Oh, I have.
Just to move it along, or?
I have confidence that with Evan and Robin, we're dealing with 2 of the cheapest people on the staff. So I don't think they're gonna,
I think
they're
I
not gonna do
prefer the
anything.
term frugal.
I mean, they're not gonna, I mean, I don't think they're gonna spend $10,000. I would assume keep it as simple as possible.
I prefer frugal.
Frugal, 2 of the most frugal people.
So if that's the case, we get to work on it tomorrow morning.
Okay,
What are
well,
the
what do
questions
you,
that
so,
people have?
but 10,000 is making you uncomfortable, or is that too much, or you wanna go 5,000?
I can see bike racks as something that is not just for one development, it's not just for the benefit of one property owner. So something like bike racks, yeah, I can see that. 10,000, I don't think we need that. You were just able to identify something for a few $100.
Yeah, why don't we say
I-
5?
5,000 at an absolute max.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking bike racks. I understand they can be very complex,
We don't need the Cadillac of bike racks,
We're
but
gonna get
something
some-
that's.
Or less, I just don't have, we don't know how much space we're talking about.
Yeah, so
don't
say
spend it all.
5, and then we'll get most of it back. I don't think, and, he could wind up just putting plastic barrels out there anyway. He say, no, I don't want them, or something. But then again, do we wanna say, oh, no, you're gonna get the bike racks, we don't care. I don't know.
So, to
I
allocate
don't know
up
that
to
we can
5.
control that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's back to the original question, right? That's gone back and around.
Well, do you want to see the permits first before we do anything?
Well, I mean, I hear Evan's point, and sorry, I had to step out to the restroom, and so I missed some of the conversation, but, I mean, I don't necessarily want to compromise safety and whatnot, but I feel like we just had a 45-minute discussion and then came back around to, well, let's just approve it. So, I don't, to me, I feel like, I think we need to answer the question, and maybe we can, you know, the questions that have been posed, and I love the idea of the bike racks, and I think that is exactly what we're trying to do in this district. PC had come back on, is trying to make, this is a walkable village, and so.
And bikeable.
And bikeable, and so we want people, it's awesome.
Well, what if we say we designate the funds to buy those, I don't know, those exact bike racks or those bike, and if he doesn't want them, then, you know, then we have to come, it comes back to the table, because that's what we want, okay? That's the kind of thing that we'd like to see. If he doesn't like that idea, then it comes back to the table. We don't buy him anything. He has to put up plastic barrels if he doesn't want people driving into his lot.
And presumably they'd be installed on the sidewalk,
And-
not around his driveway.
We have to discuss how that's gonna, we really need to, if we are,
Because
If
even if
we're
it's on his
doing it-
driveway, then it's on Gabe's property, and then people are
right,
putting
if
their
we're
bikes
do,
on it.
if it's on a public right of way, we don't need the owner. If it is on the owner's property, we need some type of agreement.
Okay.
He's not gonna
He's not gonna care.
He's
but-
already given us the use of his parking lot.
Yeah.
care. Yeah.
So Amber, does this go to your question though that you brought up?
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know that we've resolved any of those. I mean, I think we've got great ideas and we've got a lot of questions. So, I mean, I would just, somebody can do a motion or whatever, and I'll figure it out from there.
I'll make a motion that we appropriate $5,000 from the Economic Development Fund for the purchase of bike racks to be placed on the property for Firebird Cafe,
May I just add up to 5,000?
up to 5,000.
And portable?
Portable, yes, absolutely. You can add anything you want.
Well,
Well, just, it's your motion.
No.
So I would second the motion that George made. Are there any questions on the motion? And you can always vote no if you don't feel comfortable with it.
I like the idea of bike racks, but I'm just saying that that's what we came up, Raj came up with a great idea. That, I'm not saying it has to be a bike rack, but if somebody, comes up with some ingenious idea that also kind of fulfills the need and is something that can be repurposed or, moved, I don't think we should be saying you have to have a bike rack right there. I think I can't think of it offhand, but.
So I can tell you the reason why I would vote for this is because it would give us bike racks that we can then ultimately move when whatever development comes through there. We can then put it some other spot in the village.
Right.
So this is something that, yes, will solve a temporary issue, but can then be relocated somewhere else when necessary.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Good point.
Understand.
thank you all for indulging the conversation.
Yeah.
So, any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So that moves us on to consent agenda.
No, you've got your 2 added
Oh,
agenda.
thank you.
Yeah.
Ooh, 5B, approve order to void and rescind the decision in order. Yeah, you see that. For those at home, does anybody want to do a quick 1 minute?
Sure. The village in conjunction, with V-Trans, state of Vermont, is doing something called the Crescent Connector. We are required to purchase right-of-way for the new road. We went through a public hearing with some landowners. We had a little bit of a snag in that process. So our legal attorney is saying that, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, to discontinue the current process, vacate it, and then if we decide to come back to renotice it and go through making sure that all of the i's are dotted and t's are crossed. So this is the legal document that needs to be done for that first phase to be put in the books behind us, and then be able to start it again should we need to.
Anybody have any questions?
No?
Somebody want to make a motion to approve the order?
So moved.
All of us.
So George moved as written.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. 5E. I'll try this one. We talked about this before. This is to give Evan and I the ability to sign off on stuff related to the Crescent Connector.
Yep. On stuff?
On stuff.
Okay.
Well,
I simplified.
Yeah.
To execute agreements related to the Crescent Connector, not
Okay.
just carte blanche, anything related to the Crescent Connector. If that makes sense.
I'll make a motion that we approve the document, approve the document authorizing the village manager and village president to sign, boy, I'm looking for the specific language here.
The resolution.
I'll make it, yeah, that we approve the resolution authorizing consent of the Village of Essex Junction. This doesn't make any sense.
Authorizing the chair of the board of trustees or the unified manager to execute any and all agreements on behalf of the
There you go,
village.
okay, I was trying to find that. Good,
And
thank
any and all necessary and incidental documents,
this
et
is
cetera, as set forth on agenda item
President, chair.
the businessy ID. Last paragraph.
Wow.
you. Okay,
Does it matter that it calls you chair, not president?
I was going to talk
Do
to
we
you about
care?
that later.
that's okay.
I don't care.
So I started making that, so can I
Amendment?
pull that language into mine, or say I'll rescind mine and go with Amber's, or
It sounds like
whatever?
you're accepting Amber's friendly.
I am absolutely accepting Amber's friendly amendment.
Has Amber also seconded that, right, Amber?
Yep, totally seconded it.
Perfect, thanks for saying those words. So there's a motion on the table for 5E. Any further conversation on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anybody opposed? Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Now we can go to consent agenda.
Motion to approve the
Anybody want to make a
consent
motion
agenda.
to approve the consent agenda? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Reading file. Does anybody have any board member comments?
One comment, over on South Street, just up from Park as you're going towards South, or actually just past Southview, I should say. There's a house that has a whole bunch of sunflower plants in the yard, and in the green space between the sidewalk and South Street. It's on the south side of South Street. And the sunflower plants are in hundreds probably, and they totally narrow that sidewalk to maybe one person could walk through there without, I would think even one person, the plant's brushing against them. I received complaints about them, and I think we need to take some action to remove those or take them down. They're in the village roadway, the village property.
I know that when I come across things like that, I love see-click fix. Numerous times I've gone on a run.
Yep.
I've had to run around hedges. I've taken a picture, sent that thing in, and within a few
Yep.
weeks, something's done about it. So,
Because people have brought it up, I'm just bringing it up,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
likewise, I was bringing up the reference to
Yep.
see-click fix
Yep.
as a very quick, expedient
Yep.
option as well.
Just want to say that thrilled with the new court configurations and all the work that EGRP and EPR have done in Cascade and Pearl Street Park, resurfacing the basketball court in Pearl Street, adding 4 pickleball courts in each. They look great, they're being used like crazy. And it's actually really cool to see just an explosion of seniors out there
Mhm.
for hours. It's really pretty cool. They will not give up the court. You put your quarters on the court, it doesn't matter.
That's awesome.
Old reference. But yeah, it's really, really nice to see them working together, get that done.
Anybody else? Something I want to put out there, I haven't spoken with Evan or anybody else about this. As budget day is coming up within the next few months, something I want to put out there. Historically, what we've done is we've taken a day and we've taken the normal work day to just hammer out, to have our first budget conversation, meet with village staff, to go over their proposed budget, have a conversation to go back and forth. Something I want to put out there is we can continue to do what we've always done, or we could look at doing something different and doing that instead of taking one day out of the Monday to Friday, do it during our normal meetings, and or have a couple of additional evening meetings, so that way we don't get behind in the budget process. I'm not looking for anybody to give me any answers right now, but just I want to put that out there to think about, and in the coming meetings, if you have thoughts, would love to hear it.
Could, again, being new, is there a way that maybe staff or someone could provide a paragraph on how it goes? What's the process?
Budget day or
Budget process, like how, not the nitty gritty, but just start to finish, what's the process? Like you were saying, usually we get together for a day, we have meeting with the department heads, then I'm assuming you go back at some point, staff works on it, the board discusses it, goes back to staff, and there's a back and forth, so I just don't, to be able to think about that, it would be nice to know how it works, because I haven't participated in that, and simple, like not a lot of work.
I also thought I saw a Saturday meeting, but I could have been making that up. Just certainly possible.
I don't remember putting
No, we wouldn't.
No, it's usually during the
Impossible.
week. It's usually
Still
during
learning how to
the week.
read.
It just felt-
You'd have to have it at a really nice restaurant if you were gonna do that.
Yeah, okay. I'll reread my schedule.
Like a
Yeah.
fire burger.
Any other board member comments?
No.
Staff? All right, so that will bring us out of the reading file onto 8A. Sorry, I'm just gonna get to this. We're having executive session. I'll do this. I move that the trustees enter into executive session to discuss the evaluation of public officers and employees in accordance with 1 VSA, Section 313A3, and to include the manager and
If you wish.
you two and deputy
Sure.
manager.
Okay.
Second?
And is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Take a brief recess.
Can we just go into the other room? It's because it's 8 o'clock. Can we just